it's my pleasure today to speak first with Mr. Zoran Sekulić, editor-in-chief of FoNet News Agency. And also it's my pleasure to say that in June this year, Mr. Sekulić was awarded the Order of Merit by German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier for efforts in the fields of media, freedom of expression and media. I also have the honor to welcome Ana Lalić, journalist on portal nova.rs, who had a really turbulent year. She was both punished and awarded. So when Serbian government passed an order that forbids anyone but the Prime Minister to inform the public on Covid-19, Ana was brave enough to oppose the censorship and to report despite this order. The government order, luckily, was short-lived, but still, Ana ended up imprisoned for a day. But Ana is also among winners of DW Freedom of Speech Award. Last but not the least, we have our youngest panelist, Nerma Džaferović from portal Karike.ba. As you could hear previously during media selfie of Karike, also she is very young. Nerma already faced some pressures. She defines herself as a middle-aged person trapped in the body of a teenager. Still, she is precious for our discussion, since here or on BNMF we value the opinions and insights of young generations as the most important ones. So, first of all, thank you all for being here with us, and I would like to start with the same question for all of you. So, in your opinion, what is the most dangerous factor or threat for media freedom both on Balkans and globally, especially during the COVID crisis? Zoran, maybe we can start with you as the most experienced one.
Well, hello everybody. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you, Deutsche Welle Academy, for organizing not just the whole forum, but especially to dedicate this panel to the issue of freedom of speech and freedom of media. This story is a never-ending story, and freedom of speech and defending of freedom of speech is a lifetime endeavor. The greatest challenge was, is, and will be, especially in the part of the world where we live, where we work, the lack of political will. The problem is that political elites in our country notably, but as I've seen in neighborhood also, in fact never treated media community as the part of democratic process, but they treated media and journalists as tool, or to promote their own political interest and to boost their political ratings, or to fighting fees to fight with the political opponents or with any kind of critical thinking. So as long as media elites, political centers of power, official and unofficial, do not realize that the role of media is to serve the public interest, we'll have the problem with the freedom of speech and freedom of media. As societies are less democratically developed, challenges, risks, and dangers are higher. So I can't judge for other countries in the region, although I have an opinion, but I can say for Serbia that the overall media situation, especially in the field of freedom of speech and freedom of expression, is worsening with each year. Just a small illustration that directly affects the sustainability of the independent and professional media community that is with each year smaller and smaller, tinier and tinier, and more isolated than I think today, than more isolated than 20 years ago. Looking from the figures coming out from the international survey about the Media Sustainability Index, for last year, Media Sustainability Index in Serbia was at the same level as in 2000. So we are moving not ahead but backwards. So the challenge is the lack of political will, the lack and the consequence is that Serbian citizens, it's not the story just about journalists and media. It's not just first and foremost the story about journalists and media, it's the story about the fact that citizens are not properly timely and informed in a comprehensive manner about the key issues related with the quality of their lives. So been manipulated, been living in a fog, been living in uncertainty, as it is the case today during the pandemic crisis more than ever before. They can't really make the right decisions and make the right choices. So the result is that the overall situation in the country is moving backwards.
Thank you, Zoran. Now, I would like to hear from Anna if she shares the same sentiment as the one that Zoran mentioned, that we are actually going backwards.
Unfortunately, yes, I really must agree with everything what Zoran said. For me, and behind 20 years of my being a journalist, I think this is the most difficult time to work professional work like in professional journalism. The other problem that I think we have, like in Serbia, is not only censorship but also auto censorship. Many of our colleagues, many medias decided to be more careful, to make some compromise between the truth and the expectations of the government. And today we have much more tabloids, much more fake news medias or portals than we have a really independent, free and professional media in Serbia. That's a little bit even, I think, are guilty for that. When I decided to make that famous article when I was arrested because of that, I didn't make a choice between my liberation or my I don't know how to express myself. I just doing my job. For me, I think the information, especially information about public health, is the priority, and there is no law, there is no I don't know, some kind of documents that can stop us doing our job, which is interest of our nation, our population.
Anna, when we speak about your experience, we have to say, yes, Serbia is dealing with serious issues in field of media freedom for more than 30 years. But still, it's not very often for a journalist to end up in prison. But let's tell a little bit more for our international audience. What really happened was that actually government ban was not considering journalists, but medical staff, managers of hospitals and other officials, besides Prime Minister, who was the only one, right, for 24 hours. So how did it happen, first of all, that you end up in prison? And second, how does it look like to end up in prison in 2020, in 21st century, in the country where, although, as I said, we do have problems, it is really rare situation?
Yes, as you all know, the first thing that government came up when epidemic started is they are close up all institutions for media. And only the centralization of information is only at Belgrade. So what I did, I just spoke with a lot of doctors, with a lot of medical workers, and I had much information that are telling me they are struggling with the medical equipment. They don't have masks, they don't have gloves. After 3 days of that kind of information, I decided to speak about that and to write about that. Of course, I was trying to get the other side of story. I was trying to get some answers of government, of Clinical Center of Vojvodina, and other institutions. But as we all know, in Serbia, nobody speak with media if we are asking questions that are a little bit problematic. After that, I made one article. It was nothing special. It was only about that missing equipment. And the same night, after 5 or 6 hours, I was arrested. The bunch of policemen came into my house, and I was took to first at the police station, then to the prison. And I was stayed during the night. I was a press charge for spreading panic, I think. And that night in that jail was really, I was shocked. I wasn't, I was prepared. I wasn't prepared for that kind of demonstration of power. Demonstration, in one moment, I had 12 policemen in my apartment. I'm not a drug dealer. I never had some problem with police before, and for me, it was really terrifying, because at that moment I realized that they can really took me in that cell, not just for one night, that they can leave me there for a month. Thanks to my colleagues, thanks to European Union, thanks to NGO organizations, I was released in the morning. But it was really one scary night. And in that point, I realized that in Serbia, they are dealing with COVID, but they are also dealing how to make us quiet and how to kill the freedom of speech in Serbia.
Yeah, and thank you, Anna. What's really interesting is that the same morning you were released, the ban the government brought was lifted, actually,
Yes.
and anybody could publish the information and actually use their sources that you had to protect really carefully. Nerma, first of all, hello and welcome to our panel. At the previous session, speaking to Jakov, you tackled a little bit of your own experience with writing about educational system in Bosnia and problems that you had in school as a very young person. But can you elaborate it a little bit more? So what was your experience, what feelings you had, and most importantly, what were your thoughts, bearing in mind that you are very young at the very beginning and already facing pressures even on the micro level like school?
Yes, unfortunately, although I'm only 19 years old and I have maybe 3 years of experience, amateur experience in journalism and media, I have faced threats and pressures. And when I talk about it now, it doesn't seem like something that is much serious to someone older, but for me it was a big deal because I was only 17 years old. So I am one kind of person that could never stay silent about something that is unfair, and because of that, I have faced many problems in high school, and my principal, she hated me. So yes, I decided to write an article for youth magazine Karike about education in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And also before that, I had some problems with schools. For example, when I published Facebook status, on my personal profile, she threatens me if I mention school, for example, in my status. So yes, in this article, I decided to be much safer. So I decided to at least use my personal opinion about this topic, and just because of that fear, which I have mentioned before. So what I did was that I interviewed over 50 high school and college students, and also some professors, because I wanted to have two sides of that story. And not so surprisingly, comments and experiences were mostly negative, even the comments that came from the side of professors and people working in schools. The article was pretty popular back then, and it reached a big number of people, and of course my school administration. And when my principal read it, she was furious. She immediately invited me to her office, and she told me that I had tarnished the school, ruined its appearance, and that made no sense to me because I did not mention my school anywhere in the article, and moreover, my personal opinion was almost non-existent. And she continued to insult me, and telling me that I have too long, telling me that it's better to keep my mouth shut, right? And imagine when a principal tells that to a student, so 17 years old. That pretty upsetted me, and I still don't know where my courage came from. But I said to her to do what she wants, but to also be sure that I will take all steps needed to protect my rights, even if it involves talking to the Minister of Education or editor-in-chief of my magazine. And yes, I think that she only wanted to intimidate me because she didn't do anything at the end. But now when I think about it, I think that she was more frightened than me. And I think that she was more like surprised with attitude coming from the 17-year-old.
Yeah, thank you, Nerma. It stuck with me when you said, I don't know where my courage came from, and I'm sure that both Zoran and Anna can recognize themselves in that, because that's how we all feel when we are facing pressures. But what I would like to know, if that experience affected any of your future articles. Anna has mentioned self-censorship as a huge problem, so did you become more careful, or you still stayed on the bright side as a fighter for justice, as you said at the beginning?
After I finished high school, because she had no more power of me anymore, I decided to write one more article, and I decided to write everything about every problems I experienced in my high school with my principals, with my professors, and like just to speak loudly and talk about everything what happened to me during high school.
Yeah, thank you. So I got the impression that Zoran wanted to say something about the courage.
Well, I belong to that old school of journalism that is almost dying, which says facts are saint and comments are free, which means that we stubbornly insist on facts. And I don't care if anybody likes those facts or dislikes those facts. If somebody has a problem with facts, don't argue with me, then watch in a mirror. Unfortunately, today we are living in an environment in which emotions and beliefs are beating the facts. But we people from the old-fashioned type of journalism, old-fashioned I mean sticking with the basic values of the professional journalism, we are not giving up. But I wanted to draw your attention just briefly to the five areas I consider that in fact seriously the whole story about the freedom of speech and freedom of media. I think that this is the right opportunity to say this is the area which I informally titled as illusions, then as violence, then as misuse, then as discrimination, and the fifth place is not respecting the law or lawlessness. When I say illusions, we are living in an environment in which instead of living the real reality, we are living the produced reality. So the ordinary citizens live into the environment in which they are pushed in a position not to believe to the things that they see by their own eyes, but then to believe to a perception created by somebody else in order to drive their attention from the key issues in this country to the things that are in the interest of the political and ruling coalition and other centers of power. It's not just the story about the fake news. It's the story about fake narratives. It's the story about creating a parallel perception. It's the story that centers of power and mainstream media that are politically controlled on a daily basis, switch to one topic to another, or misused facts in a favor of the ruling centers. So generally speaking, the proportions of this illusion that is created now are now bigger than ever before, I dare to say. If we speak about the violence, Anna is unfortunately just of the examples that are in fact numerous. Cases of violence can be direct and non-direct. I consider that the threat is also violence, that the pressure is also violence, that I consider that not just a physical attack, but any kind of intimidation through the official sources, through tabloids or social media are combined, generally creating an environment in which professional journalists that are almost completely isolated, that hardly reach the wider public, are living in the dangerous conditions. If we speak about misuse, that means that the political centers misuse the key figures, the key events, the key problems of this society to draw the public attention and to eat the media sphere, to eat the media time, to eat the media pages, just to promote themselves, to push under the carpet key issues, and to, in fact, enable all the others with different opinions, with different approaches to reach the wider public. If we speak about the discrimination, that primarily is related with the media market, that is strictly politically controlled, especially money on the media market is politically controlled. Professional and independent media are isolated completely, and we are now facing the situation, especially under COVID pandemic, that we are fighting for everyday survival. We are discriminated also on the other way from the editorial point of view. We can't simply read all the key stakeholders, especially those on the ruling political scene, because they simply don't want to give us statements or interviews. We are officially invited to the press conferences or receiving press releases, but in very few cases we are in a position to pose the question, and if we manage to pose the question, we risk ourselves to be attacked and humiliated, usually during the live coverage of those political events. And at the end of the day, if we speak about media regulations, I would dare to say that Serbia 5 years ago adopted 3 key media laws that were highly welcomed both by media community here as well by the European Union, but into the implementation of those 3 laws, it appeared that the result was disaster. They were politically misused heavily, and instead of having state-owned media, we got party-owned media, and public money that was in previous periods was given directly to the state-owned media is now switched to the allegedly private media under the control of the
under the control of government. Yes, I understand you. Thank you, Zoran. Now I would like to ask the same question both Ana and Nerma. So, Ana, what would be your message for Nerma as a young journalist who is just making her first steps and is already facing pressures in the world of journalism? So, what would be your main message for her as the future generation of journalists?
First, I will answer you how they work today after harassment, and I should say that I was even more determined to doing my job after they released me. But there is a problem. The other problem that opened that at that time, that's what, like Zoran said. For me, even in ignorance is a violence. And after all that what happened to me, nobody wants to speak with me. One half because they hated me, or they think they should hate me. The other part was respected me, liked me, but they're afraid to speak with me. So that circle of silence, that ignorance of every institution, on every even government, every man who had some problem, but I was targeted like somebody who hates Serbia, who hates our nation, who hate our health system, and nobody wants to speak with me. That's also violence. Ignorance is a violence. About Nerma, I just only think I can say to stay brave as you are, stay smart as you are, and I'm really looking forward, because there is many more young people like Nerma who are also determined to doing professional journalism and fighting for truth.
And also, Nerma, I would like to hear a message for all of us from you. So, your message for all of us, your older colleagues, what would you say to us?
I think my part of the job is harder to give advice to someone older than me, but I will try my best. To all the journalists, but also to everyone else, I would advise them to be really informed about their rights and fully aware of them. And I didn't manage to answer the question about what is the main enemy of freedom of speech in general, and I think that it is fear of prosecution and fear of public opinion. So I would advise everyone not to be afraid of, for example, public opinion, because every time you write or say something, be sure that there will be at least one person that will not agree with you or that will judge you. And that is perfectly normal because it's impossible to please everyone. Speak loudly and fight for your rights, because once you allow someone to violate your rights, be sure that it won't be the last time. Journalism is a very powerful tool, so please use it in a right way, because we journalists can affect public opinion really, really much. And please, I would advise this to all older colleagues that have their children, that to teach their children to think critically, to have their own opinion. Do not teach them to be slaves of the system just because of fear of jumping out of some frame of expectations. Because even if you feel sometimes that you are that one little part that doesn't fit in the puzzle, or you don't want to fit in the puzzle, then just create your own puzzle and be the main part of it.
Thank you all. Unfortunately, we did receive many questions from the audience, but we don't have time to answer it. So I would like to thank you. I would like to thank you all for your really deep insights and to congratulate you on your bravery.